Hi, everybody. I'm Bryan Mudd, a fan of South Plains politics. Here's your talking points for this week. We want the best for our vets beyond a Veterans Day recognition, and although nothing's ever perfect, there are actually very few places doing better for our heroes than right here in Lubbock.
I'm Anna Mackenzie in Washington. Time is running out for Congress to get things done before the holidays. But some Republicans fear Democrats are spending too much time trying to impeach the president. I'll have that story coming up.
From the studios of KMAC Television in Lubbock, your local election headquarters. This is Talking Points with Bryan Mudd.
Thanks for joining us, everybody. Also this week, what's real? As we've seen over the past few months with the controversies surrounding the Texas House Speaker, a story is one thing when you read about it, but can be much more real when you see it or hear it for yourself. Democrats seem to want the televised impeachment hearings in Washington to make the president's activities real to all of you. Republicans are quite vocal that the proceedings are nothing more than an orchestrated, politically motivated sham. And that battle for your hearts and minds will continue because if polling numbers change enough, the Senate's attitude about all this may change with them. And remember, the Senate will act as a jury if the House brings articles of impeachment against the president.
This isn't about truth and justice. This is about fear and hate. Hate for our president and for what he stands for his agenda, and fear that they can't beat him at the ballot box. So they're going to do it by weaponizing our congressional oversight responsibility and abusing the power of this great institution for their political objectives. I say that is wholly un-American. And for my children's sake, they are doing irreparable harm to not only the presidency, but to all of our democratic institutions. You lose that, you lose the ability to govern. Republican or Democrat, you lose the ability to govern functionally for the American people. What a sad day. History will judge cruelly those who participated in this instead of doing it the old-fashioned American way, in the house to house, in the neighborhoods, in the public squares, and at the ballot box.
Regardless of your political leanings on all of this, Lubbock's congressman makes a point with his passion. Over the last couple of weeks, what work other than impeachment have you heard about coming from Washington? Some lawmakers say they can walk and chew gum at the same time, but a gun rights bill, a North American trade deal, even government funding are all at risk of being stalled now. KMAC's Anna Mackenzie takes a look.
Time is running out for Congress to get things done before the holidays. And Texas Republican Senator John Cornyn says they aren't spending their time wisely.
They are obsessed with and preoccupied with impeachment, and they can't seem to get anything else done.
Cornyn says Congress has a lengthy to-do list they need to tackle immediately. Government funding expires on November 21st, and Congress still needs to pass the United States-Mexico-Canada trade deal.
This agreement will provide billions of dollars in economic growth, new jobs here at home, and greater stability for our economy.
Cornyn says House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has instead focused her time on impeaching the president. But Pelosi says the two issues are unrelated.
Impeachment has nothing to do with it. It only has to do with our coming to agreement.
Pelosi says Democrats are hashing out their final concerns with the trade deal, and she will bring it to the floor for a vote when she is ready.
And we can't do it any sooner.
Mike Howell with the Conservative Heritage Foundation says he's not convinced that will happen before the holidays.
It shows a real lack of urgency and a commitment to the agenda that the American people need enacted.
If the USMCA is not approved before the end of 2019, it would be considered next year, which is an election year. And Cornyn says it would make it more difficult to pass. In Washington, I'm Anna Mackenzie.
All right, Anna, thank you so much. Mark Mackenzie, an associate professor of political science at Texas Tech, and participated in a campus discussion this week on the impeachment hearings as part of the school's Civil Counterpoint series. Good to have you on the show.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for being here.
How engaged are young people in kind of what's going on in Washington? Does it come up at all in classrooms or just around?
So specifically about what's going on right now with the impeachment process, I haven't had any students ask me questions about this. We'll talk about it a little bit next week because I talk about the presidency next week in class, in one of my classes. But it's, you know, students they have their own lives and are engaged in other things, and that's understandable.
Sure. And what about the Civil Counterpoint series that you were a part of this week? Is it well attended? Are people interested in coming to that and sort of learning what's going on? How did that go?
So this was my first experience with the event, and I was really impressed. It was a very pleasurable event. It's such a partisan issue in Washington, the impeachment process, but everyone on the panel was very respectful and engaged and offered some really interesting points, differing points, and the questions from the audience seemed very engaged. The audience members were really respectful and had some thoughtful questions that they asked. So I was very impressed with the entire event.
Impressed. Did it surprise you though? Because I think the world sort of looks at Facebook and Twitter and places like that and just sees all of this all the time. Was that surprising to you to watch the kids just talk about things in a normal fashion?
I won't say it was surprising, but it was, I had a little bit of trepidation, I guess, going into the event because, you know, if you turn on some of the cable news networks, you never know what you're going to expect in terms of the process in Washington these days. But it was very reassuring. You know, I felt like, gosh, if Democrats, Republicans, and Independents in the Lubbock community could get together, we'd have all this solved pretty quickly.
We keep telling people that here in God's country we can do these, we can kind of do everything here, but no one tends to listen. Hey, in the classroom, you said you were going to talk about the presidency next week. How will this be a teaching moment for you to get kids an understanding of the sort of historical thing that we're seeing out of Washington right now?
Well, it's such a rare event, so we've only had 2 formal impeachments of Andrew Johnson after the Civil War and President Clinton, and impeachment was started with Richard Nixon. So we don't really have a whole lot of history to sort of tell us exactly how it's supposed to go. But I'll talk with the students about what are the rules, what does the Constitution say. That's always a great place to start. And you know, it's good for, if you want to keep an open mind about it, to see how the process plays out and try to get as much information from different sources as possible, both historically and, so historically you might look at the Federalist Papers, mention a little bit about impeachment, as well as, you know, a variety of news sources. That's what I would suggest to the students if they were interested in it.
It's sort of a rock-solid base of information from the original sources, Constitution, Federalist Papers, things like that.
Sure.
Do you talk about the spin of things from both sides of the political spectrum at all?
Sure. Well, so just in my classes in particular, I typically don't get too much into the nitty-gritty of politics. I think some students come into my classes thinking that, you know, what they're going to learn is what they're seeing on CNN or Fox or some of the other cable news stations, but it's really up to the students to form their own opinions. You know, I'm just, you know, the little person providing the sort of a structure and context, and it's really up to them, right? And the voters next November, they'll be the ultimate deciders in whether the impeachment played out properly or not.
Interesting. Anna Mackenzie is Associate Professor of Political Science at Tech. I thought it was interesting to have someone on to give us sort of a little perspective on what's going on with a lot of the young people out there, and we appreciate you coming on with us today.
Thank you very much.
And let's do this week's poll question. As much as you're able, are you actually watching the live impeachment hearings? Talk to us on our KMAC News Facebook page and on everythinglubbock.com. Click Talking Points. Give us your opinion on that.